Call to order the regular session of the County Commissioners for May the 16th, 2017. First of all, welcome to all of you who are here. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate seeing you tonight. One thing I want to say before we have the invocation is, you see we've got an empty seat here. Commissioner Copeland has been struggling with some health issues and has to do with cancer. I talked with him this morning. Commissioner Wooten talked to him this morning. Keep Commissioner Copeland in your prayers. He's struggling. And at this time, we'd like to ask Mr. Vic Hill from Page United Methodist Church in the big city of Biscoe to come up and do our education. And Reverend Hill, thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I'm going to stand.
Yes, we want you to do that.
I've always wondered when I leave Biscoe, the traffic is just horrendous. And I spent like almost 30 years in the Raleigh area. So but anyway, I've been here 3 years. I'm really impressed with that. This is great. This is great. Small towns are great. I love it. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, we read in verse 17, to pray without ceasing. To pray without ceasing. So therefore, let's bow our heads and pray this to God. Glorious God, we come here this evening under this beautiful sunshiny day that is now closing out into a starry night that will soon be upon us. We give you thanks for the seasons of change, for it shows us what you can do. You can take winter and make it into spring and spring into summer, for all is from you. We ask, oh God, that you be with those that are going through times of sickness. We ask that you be with those that are grieving, that they feel your comfort and peace. We ask you, oh God, tonight that you be with those as voices are lifted and decisions are made, that we will look to you in all things. We give you thanks again for all and pray this to you in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, who is our Lord and our Savior. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Hill, Reverend Hill, thank you. Thank you. Now we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Manager.
If you are able, please rise and join us in reciting our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You got in your packet on your information the various minutes that we have to approve. Do I hear a motion that we approve the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes in the packet.
Got a motion from Commissioner Matheny. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Wooten. Are there any discussion? Not all in favor, say aye. Aye. Secondly, we need approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the
Got a
agenda.
motion from Commissioner Matheny to approve our agenda for tonight. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Crisco. Any discussion? Not all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next thing on our agenda is the public forum, and we've had one person to sign up to speak at the forum. However, anyone, if they're not signed up, can speak as well. Certainly welcome the comments from our community. We do have an overview of the rules and procedures we want to go over prior to that. Mr. Manager.
Chairman, thank you. The public comment period shall be for the purpose of allowing members of the public to comment on county business or items on the Board of Commissioners' agenda. This period shall not serve as a forum for debate with the county commissioners. Remarks shall be addressed directly to the board and not to staff, the audience, or media. The chairman will open the public comment period. Any person who wishes to speak shall approach the podium and announce his or her name and physical address prior to making comment. Any citizen desiring to comment on a matter of public interest within the authority of the Board of Commissioners to legislate in an open forum shall be allocated 3 minutes time. Citizens may yield their time on a specific topic by utilizing no more than 2 other citizens' time slots. This will allow up to but no more than 9 minutes for one person. The county manager shall notify the chairman upon the expiration of allocated time. We do have one public hearing tonight. That is for the upcoming FY 17-18 budget. And so if anyone wants to speak about the budget, they can do so during that public forum.
Okay. And again, to reiterate what the manager has talked about, is that we have a public forum now where you can speak about anything you want to talk to us about. We do have a budget hearing, a public hearing, which is required. We actually have two of them. I think we just required to have one, but I think we always have two. That'll be another one next meeting. So if you're here to speak about our budget and want to engage in that particular part of the program, wait till we get down to the public hearing about the budget. Anyone else that wants to speak about anything else, we will let you come and speak right now. When you come up, please, you'll see the monitor to my right, to your left, with the time on it. If you will, before you speak, give us your name and address for the record, and we won't start the time until after you've given us your name and address. Have Tina Harris from Star. Does,
Maybe we should wait
No.
and speak with the budget, you know, it consumes the budget, but I think it's already been discussed and passed. Should I speak now?
You certainly can. You can come back and speak again in the budget if you want to, so, but we'll let you come up now, and if you hear something in the budget presentation that you want to speak about, you can do it again. How's that?
That's good. Thank you, Commissioners, I appreciate this opportunity to say a few words. This concern.
Now, let's get your name and address first. We have to have that from you for the record.
My name is Tina Harris, I live at 409 Temple Terrace Lane, Star.
Thank you.
This concerns the meals for the underprivileged that have been going on, that has been going on for about 4 years. I started volunteering for my church, and it was one Wednesday a month, and then before I knew it, I was going, like different Wednesdays or different days if I didn't think, because I enjoyed it so much. A couple of weeks ago, when we heard the news, several people came up to me and said, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? A lot of these people are out of jobs, not by their choice, myself included. I would have still been working, but anyway, it keeps them involved with the community. There's been people that have gotten together that they haven't seen for years, and they enjoy it. It's just getting together and talking and having a meal, and it may be the only meal they get that day. I took the liberty of going on, I couldn't get any newer figures, but from 2013 to 2014, the county commissioners made $8,640 a year, which divides into $720 per month.
Ma'am, not every county commissioner takes a salary, so you know that.
Yeah, I realize that. I know
Just so
there's
you'll
a
know.
couple of-
Just-
there's a couple of
And we won't penalize you for time for
They
that.
are
So
not taking-
if you're putting money together, you can subtract right much out of
Yeah,
that.
they're not taking their salary, their stipends. But the point was, is it $720 a month? And a lot of these people have to live on that. And that's so sad. And I had one instance, a couple of weeks ago, there was this lady who didn't come on a Friday. She didn't come with the lady she was supposed to come to. And so when the lady came to the gathering there at the bank, she mentioned to our facilitator, she said, I don't know what happened to Ava, but she didn't come to the door. And so they went on with their meal and everything, and so they went, after the meal, Brenda went to the house, and there she was on the phone. She couldn't get her phone. The phone was on the wall. That's people looking after people. And everybody seems to enjoy it so much, and if there's any way that it can be done, any extra grants written or whatever, I think it's just been such a marvelous opportunity for all these people that get out and are not secluded in their house and in their homes anymore, and it's wonderful to see how happy they are. So that's it.
Thank you. Ma'am, let me say that let's stay within this topic, because we don't use this as a forum for debate, but I would like to make some comments about, there may be some things we know that you folks that are here on this matter do not know tonight, and I'll make some comments and ask the other commissioners. Commissioner Matheny serves on that board, Commissioner Woodard. My wife's in the back. I work a meal site, So we know a little bit about that, and I'll make some comments. Anyone else want to speak on the meal sites? And that's what we're talking. Yes, ma'am, come up and please do. And please give us your name and address, please.
My name is Barbara Hayes, and my physical address is 361 Brewer Road, Seagrove. And I would just like to reemphasize what Tina had to say. It is not necessarily people getting together for the meal. It's the family. I mean, I attended the ones in Star. And I started going whenever my husband was diagnosed with cancer, and I was having to stay at home with him, and I would go and get us meals and take back for us to eat. Then after he passed away, I started attending and getting to know the ladies and gentlemen, and we became a family. And like Tina said, when Ava didn't show up, we all were concerned. We're that way. If somebody's not there, we find out why. If we didn't have the meals, who knows what could have happened. It could have been very, very devastating. And I just want to say that, we really need them back. Not necessarily for the meals, but for the fellowship. And that's just all I've got to say.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. Anyone else on this, and let's stay with the meal sites, and then we'll open the floor up for anything else. Anyone else? Because we've got a good contingent. Come on up, sir.
Nick Hunsucker, 204 North Main Street, Visitor.
Well, you can sing for us when you get through talking. That's it.
I'd like to second what they said, every word of it. We've got, 3 or 4 years ago, it's been going on, we got to where we look forward to that. For the fellowship, there's a lot of people that come for that alone, and of course, a lot of people come for the food, and we just have the best time, and I hate to see it cut out. And I know the Troy Montgomery Senior Center is a great, marvelous place. A lot of people that live, a long ways from there, people come by and get them to bring them these meals that can't go to the Montgomery Senior Center. So I'd like to see it continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Hunsucker. Anyone else? Anyone else? Pastor, come on up.
Steve Wilkins from the 304 Taft Street, Detroit. And I've already had my say, but I would just say the food is important. I agree. And in my comments last time I spoke with you, that the peripheral benefits are critical too. But to give you an illustration, my fund that I use at the church to help people in crisis, in the time since I talked to you guys, it's down, I think I have $40 left. There were several $100s in there. So people are depending on the food itself. And I also want to express thanks to all of you for your personal concern for the program, especially Mr. Matheny for taking the initiative to try to get some churches and other organizations together to see what we can do. So I'm glad that you take it seriously. That's it.
Anyone else? Before we're going to make some comments about this one particular item. Anyone else? Let me, and I want Mr. Matheny to make some comments about what he's. Somebody else? Okay. All right. Good deal. You're welcome. We'll let you anyway. And when we finish, you're welcome to come on. The Council on Aging is where this particular project, the meal site, is what most of you are talking about to now originated. And let me tell you a little bit, and I'll be as simple about this as possible, but the Council of Aging has two what we call pots of funds. One of those is a grant that comes from the federal area that has been cut this year, that the county matches a small stipend of $30,000, $25,000, something like that to get that grant in here, but those funds can only be used for 4 things: transportation, congregate meal site, in-home care, and
Meals on Wheels.
Meals on Wheels. That's all that can be used for. There's guidelines. Any grant you have, there's guidelines. There's strings to it, and you've got to stay within those guidelines. We worked every year with the Council on Aging with a budget that the Council on Aging, and there's nothing wrong with this. What I'm about to say is not a complaint, because this service is outstanding enough that I love to work it. I'm like you folks are. And what has happened over the last 3 or 4 years is the cost has outrun the funds. Those funds are, it's expensive to run the kitchen and the transportation, not the grant side, the outreach side. I'm talking about the other side now, that we have to supply the funds for. My guess, and I'm not going to judge, is that there may have been anticipation that private funding was available through some of the foundations and some grants, as you spoke about, that maybe didn't materialize. The county's been very, I think, generous to the Council on Aging. As a matter of fact, this coming year, we're going to double so we can keep some of the Council on Aging alive. If we didn't, it would probably fail. That means no Meals on Wheels, no congregate meal site, no transportation, no in-home care. If it failed, those things would go away. So we're, in order to make up for all the deficiencies of the past few years, and again, we're not blaming anybody. It got to be a big item, and the funds didn't come in from the private sector and other areas to support it. But we're having, and if you stay around long enough, you'll hear our budget report tonight, and you'll see what I'm talking about, as far as we're going to have a loss of revenue as well. Anyway, long story short, a lot of people, when this thing, it started to materialize that there were some financial issues, you wouldn't believe the work that went on to this thing. Mr. Matheny right now is working hard to try to keep food flowing. You probably will not see meals, but we want to keep the food pantries in the best shape we can keep them in. In the situation I'm in, our church is like the Presbyterian church. We're, as most churches have become, as we've gotten older and less hair and more gray hair, our churches begin to depreciate some in membership and funding. Fortunately, in our church, we have found a way to raise some funds, and we've kept our meal site open. But it's expensive, and we're going to run out of money. But every Thursday, we feed the same people that were coming to the meal site a hot meal. And thus far, we've been able to supply them with some groceries. But that's all within our outreach, and people help us fund that. We've gone out and knocked on doors. Our church can't afford to do it. But because we're aggressive out in our community to try to pick up funding, it has worked. Now, how long will that work? We'll probably end up at some point, like the pastor over here, that will be having to shake our head and say no. Those meals are costing between $4 and $5 to produce, and of course, you know what we try to get out there on the field. I cannot see the meal sites continuing this coming year. Not saying that if like in our case, if the community will step up and foundations and whatever will get involved and do some things about funds, they're very expensive. To keep the kitchen open is very expensive, and that's all part of the outreach dollars. We're having to double what we're going to put into this thing just to keep the council alive to do the other things that they try to do. Anyway, sort of wanted you to know there's 2 pots of money involved. One is the grant that we cannot utilize for meal sites or for outreach that we're doing on the other side where all those meals are coming from. It's just not possible to do that. It's actually against the federal guidelines to do that. A lot of people have responded. Commissioner Matheny has just last week, I think, I'll let him expand on this, had a meeting with all the churches that he tried to get up with that could attend to try to keep groceries and food pantries open and try to do food. It's important. We understand that it's not just about a lot of people that are hungry that need the food, that there's a fellowship part involved that many of you talked about as well. But I don't want to paint the picture that we're going to make this work, because it's going to be very difficult for us to keep that kitchen open and running like it is now from an outreach side, just because it's so expensive. And what you're going to ask me the next, and I'm going to address it now, is, okay, I looked at your budget, and you can do something with the golf course, and you can do something with this and something with that, but you can't help us. Well, let me answer that question for you. Those funds are allotted in an economic development budget, and is it county dollars? It is. So I won't have to say it after the public hearing. I'll tell you now. I don't play golf, because I've had this question asked to me. I have gotten calls, and I know that's coming up in a few minutes or when we leave. I don't use the facility. But that facility is also a huge part of a lot of things. One of it's economic development, where you have recreation not only for adults but for kids. It also has a facility where they raise a lot of money every year for local charities that maybe some of them could help you. One of them is helping a lot of, some of these charitable organizations maybe could help you if you got in touch with them that raise money on these tournaments they have. Most any Friday, or at least 1 or 2 Fridays a month, you'll see the veterans or the foundation or the First Health Foundation or the Boy Scouts or someone out there playing to raise money. And there's some discontent among the board. Commissioner Crisco, who's a great friend of mine, we've been friends for years, he's not going to vote for that, and I understand that. He and I have talked about it, we're friends, it's not going to bother us at all. It's just a difference of opinion. But we know that those questions come up, we've got those funds delegated, but let me say this, we're going to get out of that business too. We're not going to do it but 1 more year, and we're going to decrease it tremendously. So that's going away as well. The entity out there is going to have to find a way to do it. There's other questions that come up about that. If you can do this, why can't you do that? A lot of times there's another reason. But there's a reason that we do recreation funds. There's a reason that we do a lot of things. Just so you'll know, the increase of the Council of Aging, Mr. Woodard, is probably the largest in percentage of anyone. Am I correct?
Yes, it's actually 3 times.
3 times. And what we got to do is make up for the past financial problems and try to address the future to keep it alive. Now, Mr. Matheny, I'll let you talk. I'm sorry. I rambled around, tried to cover a lot of area in a hurry.
Well, I'll just say on the expense side, some people want to know how much the meals actually cost to produce for the congregate, or the community meal sites, and the cost of the food is probably averages about $1.50. But the economic challenge with Council on Aging was the capitalizing all of the equipment for the kitchen and all the transportation, all the trucks and vehicles, etc., that money was not there, and sooner or later they wouldn't be able to replace tires on vehicles or replace vehicles when they wear out, replace equipment in the kitchen, etc. On the food side, there is plenty of food coming into the county from Second Harvest Food Bank. In fact, more food than we can give away. And we've been working, most of the food comes into Star, the facility there, or into Mount Gilead. And some of it supports the existing food pantries. There's the bulk of the food is what's called TFAP, or the surplus food that comes from Charlotte. And the other big source of food is the commodity food, which comes from collecting from the various grocery stores in both Montgomery and Stanley County. So as indicated, we've been working to have a committee work with the churches or any other community organization to get this food distributed. So if anybody wants to help or wants to figure out how you can get some of this food, just see me or call me, or my contact information is on the county website, and if you need it, I'll give it to you. Come up and see me afterwards. On the community meal sites, hopefully we can, after things settle out in the kitchen and we get a true cost of what things are going there, I'm a little more optimistic than Commissioner Morris that perhaps we can reinstitute some of the meal sites, and there's funding in the budget. In fact, we'll ask Mr. Woodard to speak to the funding that has been allocated to provide for a couple of sites and even funding for meals. So we're very cognizant of the both the food and the fellowship issues associated with closing the meal sites, and we're working hard outside of the government side of things to make things work as best as they can for the people that need it. Matthew, you want to talk a little bit about the funding in the budget for the...
I will, if I can first just make sure that people do understand that there are services available for those in need. And that if anybody knows of someone that needs help from the Department of Social Services, that they should contact us through Adult Protective Services. I want to make sure that we get that out there, that there are services available. With that said, I understand the beauty of the community feed sites. The beauty of it was non-governmental. that there was no distinction between how much money you had or how big your house was, or if you had or you had not. It was a place that people could come together and socialize and share a meal and commune. And yes, some people needed that meal. And some of these people were too ashamed to come and apply for social services. They were too ashamed to get on the bus and go to the congregate site in Troy. The board has certainly expressed that to me, and we understand that. The situation we find ourselves in is with most nonprofits, and that's what the Council on Aging was. They were a nonprofit, and with most of them, especially in rural areas, it's one person's organization. And I know there was a lot of hard-working people in the Council on Aging, but Mike Rude was the Council on Aging. And as Mike's transitioning out, there's no one there that can balance all the things Mike did with federal funds on these programs and donations on these programs. And yes, Mike's model was that he was going to make enough money by doing enough meals at the community feed sites that it would be able to pay for itself. Now, that never really came to fruition, but no one ever came to the county and said, look, we need X amount of dollars to keep this going. Nobody ever came with a budget proposal. It was the Council on Aging board saying, look, we're in trouble. We need somebody to help us. And so we stepped in, Social Services Director right behind you, Stephanie Smith, some of her staff, myself, the commissioners, we went and sat down and said, okay, what's your finances? What are you doing? What's the problems? The Piedmont Triad Regional Council on Government is the ones that have to check all the boxes on the federal money. And they were there and they were saying, look, you can't do this anymore. You can't do that. And so the county said, okay, right now we need to kind of separate all the issues. Here are the federal programs, the site in Troy, the Meals on Wheels, which is the biggest expenditure. Of that $300,000 grant, 40% of it goes just to Meals on Wheels. In-home aid services, people coming in, and right now, those in-home aid services, the people that are employed, they can't touch the client. They can take out the trash, might be able to feed the dog, but they cannot provide hands-on services. We had social services go out and do an evaluation. People are having trouble bathing. They need higher level services. And so we're going to be able to offer next year higher level services to do that hands-on bathing and help you take your medicines and so forth and so on. And so we're making those areas bit better. We're trying to chalk the lines, if you will, to make sure there's no crossing over of this dollar, that dollar. And then, as Commissioner Matheny said, hopefully when the council hires their next director, that person's going to be just as much of a go-getter as Mike Rude was. And without making mistakes of the past, we'll chart a pathway forward and we can reintroduce this. We've already met with the mayors and managers from the 5 towns. We met with them this week and said, Monday morning, and said, look, we want to keep the community feed sites going. Town of Star, can you provide services at the old bank building in Star? And the county's looking to give them money to buy meals at that $5 rate for needy people. We asked Mount Gilead to do the same at the Highland Center. And so right now it's a period of transition. But I have personally been in several meetings, and it is a priority to me. There's some things you can't do with governmental funds. But I understand, again, the beauty of this community feed site, that it was not governmental. And nobody asked you how much money you had and this, that, and the other. And it's going to be difficult moving forward. In the ideal world, you have enough people who believe in it that they write a check and keep the nonprofit going. That's how nonprofits work, donations, not necessarily government checks. But we do understand, and we're working on it. It's just in flux right now, and we're trying to keep those core services going. Without Mike Rude, we're all worried that, are the Meals on Wheels going to stop coming? Well, if we'd have stopped and shut down the kitchen in Star, where would the food come from? Back in the day, it came from Fayetteville. Well, there's no providers inside the county that are certified to provide those meals. And these are people who are homebound. and those in-home aid services. And so we're trying to keep the organization afloat. We've had to increase our funding to the council from $30,000 to $92,000 next year just to keep those core services going. And there are limits to funds, but we're working on it, and I know to a single commissioner, all 5 of them, they feel very passionate about these services, and they want a solution, and we're trying to work on it. And I appreciate the people who've called me. I've had half dozen folks call me to express the same sentiment. Look, this is a good thing. And I agreed 100%. It's a great thing. We just got to make sure we do it the right way. We've got to make sure who we partner with. We might have to reduce the number of sites, but you know, I'm optimistic too that we can get a good leader in the Council on Aging, get a good plan moving forward, and continue to serve the people of Montgomery County, because the proof, you know, was in the number of people that showed up. It was of value to this community, and we want to continue it. It's just in flux right now as we try to straighten everything out.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody else? Okay. Mike, you good? I'm good. All right, anyone else want to speak on the Council of Aging issue before I open up the floor for anything else? All right, anyone else want to speak in the public forum? Sure? You can still speak at the budget, open at the mic in the budget hearing as well. It'll be a public hearing. All right, if not, then the next thing on our agenda is approve the consent agenda. Have a motion to approve.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
We've got a motion from Commissioner Atheny. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Crisco. Any discussion? Not all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Good, thank you. We have with us tonight Victoria Witt, who sees us more than once a year, but especially this time of year, from Sandhurst Center's budget request and annual update. Ms. Witt, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I am Victoria Witt. I'm the CEO of Sandhill Center, and I'm here tonight to present to you Sandhill Center's request for county general funding. Your county manager already has our request, and I'm sure you've seen it, so I'm here tonight to formally present that to you. Before I get started, I would like to acknowledge and thank you for the appointment of Commissioner Copeland to our Sandhill Center Board. Commissioner Copeland has served on the board for years. He did call me today to let me know he would not be here tonight, and we are sending our thoughts and prayers to him as he continues to recover. Also, the other Montgomery County representative to the Sandhill Center Board is Carol Whitaker. I can assure you that Commissioner Copeland and Ms. Whitaker are there every time the door is open as far as a board meeting, and Montgomery County is well represented on the Sandhill Center Board. And thank you once again for the appointment of these two great people. Back in March 14th, Sandhill Center Board did meet to decide how much we were going to request of each of our counties. As you're aware, we serve a 9-county catchment area, of which Montgomery County is one of the 9. The board, for the 13th year in a row, made the decision to not request any additional funding from you. So the request we're making is $60,775. That's the same amount we have requested for 13 years. You have been gracious enough to provide that to us, and we look forward to your continuing support. I'll remind you that that funding stays right here in Montgomery County through the services that are delivered down the street at the walk-in crisis facility. Because our counties are so generous with funding, we are one of the few LMEs that's able to keep a brick and mortar facility in the county for people to walk in and receive crisis psychiatric services. Would also like to update you just briefly. You may remember when I came to you last year, I told you that our commissioners, my board members had directed me to meet with the commissioners in each of the counties and determine what are some of the needs, the psychiatric, mental health, substance abuse needs in the community. We started those meetings. We had a great meeting with your county manager and with your sheriff. As a result of that meeting, Sand Hill Center has been providing funding for the detention center to bring video conferencing capability to provide psychiatric services to the inmates that are in the jail, the detention center. I just talked with your sheriff, and he shared a wonderful success story with me, which I'm going to repeat far and wide. And our plan would be to continue that. If you don't know what that is, it's telemedicine, telepsychiatry, whereby the contractor, I believe, assures 24/7 ability to deal with crises. It's telepsychiatry. It's not in person necessarily, but we found it works really well in rural areas. And they're available to make recommendations about medications, discharge planning, aftercare, that type thing. As I told the sheriff, our plan would be to continue that next year. We're very much open to a meeting to find out, do we need to tweak it, do we need to add to it, whatever. We'll be working with him on that. We also met with, at that time, Dottie and Kevin about some needs at DSS. So we are now funding a position that works with folks, works in the child protective services area, but that person does prevention. I believe they wanted to see, instead of waiting for a child to need to enter into out-of-home placement, were there some preventive things that they could do to prevent that. So that is another area that we are funding, and we are interested. I'll be getting with your new DSS director to talk about that some more as far as moving forward next year and funding that. And then lastly, would like to thank you. Your Montgomery County Community College really stepped up to the plate and has been working with us on expanding something called mental health first aid. What that is training for non-professional folks in how to recognize folks that are having mental health issues and how to deal with them. The community college co-hosted with us recently a train the trainer event. We had a lot of people come to that, and as a result, you now have people in Montgomery County that are trainers. To date, I understand we've had 23 of your DSS workers trained. We've had some of your corrections people trained, and we plan to roll out additional training in the community. In your packet, you also have a dashboard which shows the number of people that have been served in Montgomery County. It also, as you can see, the bars go up, which is a good thing.
We got it on the screen for you.
It's on the screen, and it also shows you the amount of Medicaid funding that's being spent in the county for behavioral health services. Lastly, you also have our annual report and our quarterly report. I'm not going to go over that, but I hope you have the opportunity or will have the opportunity to review this. This is our opportunity to tell the community, our state legislators, other people about what's going on at Sand Hill Center. I will stop there and be happy to answer any questions about our county general funding request or anything about Sand Hill Center.
Mr. Levine?
Victoria, on the numbers served, are those unique individuals,
Yes.
sir?
Yes.
So they're about 1,200 last year.
Those are unique.
Other questions, comments? Mr. Manager, I think this is in our budget request, so we don't have to have action here.
That's right.
Okay. Anything else? Ms. Witt, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is our public hearings, and you've got this broken down into three. Is that correct, Mr.? We'll go into one public hearing and cover all three topics. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'll go ahead and jump in right there if I may.
And we're in, for the record, we're in a public hearing as we speak.
And as the chairman said earlier, there'll be two public hearings for the budget. The second one will be next month, where the Board of Commissioners will vote to adopt the budget for the upcoming 17-18 year. At that meeting, the board will sit as the Fire Commission for Baden Lake and set the tax rates for those two districts at Baden Lake and also Lake Tillery. Included in the budget for next year is the county manager's budget message, and I won't belabor the point, so to speak, because I did try to capture the process, what the challenges were in this year's budget and what the opportunities were. It's never fun to face a revenue loss. The landfill is our third largest individual source of revenue behind ad valorem tax and sales tax. The landfill in Randolph County has opened, and so they're receiving the waste streams from Guilford and Randolph counties. And so we will not be, it's not a one-year loss, it's a reoccurring loss. Those funds will not be coming back, and it's always difficult to feel like you're sliding backwards in revenues. But I do have to compliment the Board of Commissioners that over the last several years that they have been frugal, and they have asked the employees and department heads to limit expenses to the best of their ability, and by doing that there are some rainy day funds. And so while we did have to make some infrastructure cuts in this year's budget, that there are funds to draw upon. So overall, we will continue to go in the right direction. And I feel, as the board has shared with me, that they give a lot of that credit to the department heads and the employees of the county. Looking out in the audience, there's about 16 of the departments head here, and they really work well as a team. CD has done a wonderful job of meeting with them about their budgetary needs, and they all realize that we do have limited means, and they only ask when something's absolutely necessary and is going to provide a better service to the people of Montgomery County. And so I certainly do thank all of them for their efforts. We're very fortunate to have that caliber of people working for the county. At the same time, we were able to make adjustments, additional allocations in this year's budget to meet priority needs. One was to education. And there was a $100,000 increase to the school system budget and a slight increase to the community college budget. And there was also a significant increase, as we talked earlier, to senior citizens and senior adult services. Also of interest and very important to me is the raise to the county employees, that they are going to receive a 2.5% cost of living increase if the board approves it next month. And they certainly have done a wonderful job, and we're certainly doing it with less number of employees than we used to. I will also mention that in the budget is allocations for equipment, and that equipment is used by non-employees like the rescue squad and the volunteer fire department. 21, almost 22% of our budget goes to public safety, and that includes the sheriff's office deputies, and which are, of course, employees, and the emergency management director. But the county is able to fund equipment for the rescue squad and for the volunteer fire department. Today we had two tragedies. One, the explosion down at Jordan Lumber and at Unilin. 2 people seriously injured there. That fire responded to by the Wayville Department and others, and to get under control. And then the fatality, the 2-person fatality here in Troy with a car wreck. And I want to certainly thank those people who are not receiving any funds, but the county's putting the equipment out there, and they do a wonderful job. But I'll be glad to answer any questions about the budget. And again, we'll have a second public hearing in June.
Any questions from the commissioners before we open the floor? Any comments from the commissioners? Now, we are in the public hearing. Does anybody from the public would like to speak to our budgetary process or the budget itself? Mr. Woodard, you didn't mention, I don't think there was a tax increase in this budget.
Yes, there was no tax increase.
There you
The tax rate remains at 62 cent for general county tax. The two fire districts, Baden Lake and Tillery, public hearing will be done on the Baden Lake one in June to set that tax rate.
Okay. Floor is open in this public hearing for anyone to speak. If not, we're going to close the public hearing, and we do not vote on this tonight. We will vote on this for our 2017-18 budget in the next meeting, which we will have an additional public hearing pertaining to the budget. Anything else, Mr. Manager, on the budget?
No, sir.
Commissioners? Thank you. And we're down to your report, Mr. Manager. We're going to work you hard tonight.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. The first item is my recommendation for funding for the Denson's Creek Golf Course. The county entered into a partnership with the town of Troy back in December of 15 to try to offset some of the expenses of dealing with that golf course. And my recommendation is in the board packet, and I will not recount that word for word. The board as a whole, as a majority, recognized the importance of that course and the economic development aspect of it, and having something like that in the county did bring value, and was something that folks in the county enjoyed, and out-of-county and folks enjoyed, and we certainly, as I mentioned earlier, sliding back with revenue, you hate to lose revenue, well, you also hate to lose amenities. You would hate to lose a hospital, you'd hate to lose a public course that's owned by the town. And so the board in 2015 agreed to try to offset the cost and to get a plan in place to grow the golf course so it would be self-sustaining. I think Troy has done a good job, and management has had a good job taking care of the course and cutting costs. I think the course is as fine a shape as it's ever been in its existence, and compared to other public courses is far superior to the ones I've seen, the local course is. But at the end of the day, my recommendation is for the county to stop funding Denson's Creek. The cycle of golf play is not foreseeable in the near future, that people are going to be playing golf. And despite the cuts that town of Troy has made, it just does not look like it's going to be self-sustainable. And when we are facing $700,000 revenue losses with the landfill, and we see the folks that showed up tonight and the needs that are for senior services, that my recommendation is that we're going to have to stop funding it. I feel like we took a commitment and a partnership in 2015 with Troy, and so my recommendation is to fund them at the $50,000 level for the expenditures they've incurred this fiscal year. Troy will have to make a tough decision as to what they're going to do with the course and what it means to them and their tax rate and so forth, but not leaving them holding the bag, so to speak. My recommendation is in the upcoming budget to give them half that appropriation, $25,000, that would give them a 6-month window in order to decide what to do with the golf course.
Mr. Wood, are you proposing that we approve the 50, which we have budgeted now for this year's budget, and the 25 for next year? Are you proposing that we approve that next year? Are those the proposals?
No, the second part would be in the budget vote in June.
Okay.
The recommendation right now, while overarching as to what the long-term plan was to cease funding them, I guess the motion item now would be whether or not to allocate the $50,000 from this year's economic development fund to the golf course.
Okay. Any comments from the commissioners before we bring this to a vote? Okay, what we have is a recommendation from the manager that we utilize some of our economic development funds, which we have, to supplement the town of Troy with the golf course operation in this year's budget. And then it'll be in our next year's budget, the second part of your recommendation, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, pleasure of the board.
I'll move to approve the $50,000 assistance for this fiscal year.
We have a second.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the $50,000 from the Economic Development Fund for this year's supplement, this fiscal year's supplement to the local golf course, the Town of Troy's golf course. Are there any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. And any opposed?
Aye.
That was opposition from Commissioner Crisco, so that passes 3-1. Thank you. All right. Mr. Manager, you can continue now.
Proud to see that the number of reports under the county reports is growing, and we certainly thank David in the library and Molly at the Cooperative Extension for supplying monthly reports to the commissioners. Again, to let them and the public know the good things that are going on. Was part of our website revamp that we wanted to get people to our website to see what's going on in the county, and having the budget package on the monthly Board of Commissioners packet online and all these reports included, I think is very beneficial to the community, and I will not go over them individually, but staff is here to answer any questions the board may have about actions of the county over the past month. I would like to mention the Union County IBT. Of course, on May 11th, this past Thursday, the EMC board ruled in favor of Union County to issue them the full certificate for withdrawal from Lake Tillery. The county made its position clear from the very first that we were not opposed in principle to an IBT. We just wanted an assurance that the people of Montgomery County was protected, our future was protected, and that the environment was protected, and that this was done in an unbiased and ethical way. And when we learned from the state early on that they just checked boxes, and that Union County was the one, the people requesting the water was buying the engineers and paying all the bills, and these reports were coming back in their favor, that we were opposed to that because we did not think that that was the way the process should be. And so the board challenged that decision, and we went to mediation. Unsuccessful there. Union County not willing to compromise or consider our standpoints or what our engineers have brought out. Even though we raised a lot of noise, I do not feel like the state has taken any attention to it. The EMC board was listening to the recommendation of DEQ staff. At that meeting, DEQ staff could not even point out Lake Tillery on a map. These people are asleep at the wheel, and their recommendation to that board was not the right thing to do. I'll read you, if I may, the press release that they released Friday. This is on DEQ's website. By state law, the Environmental Management Commission decides whether to grant or deny an interbasin transfer certificate based on factors established in state law. The commission is required by state law to consider the necessity and the benefits of the transfer and the degree to which the transfer is reasonable. The commission must also consider the water supply needs, the detrimental effects on the source and receiving water basins, wastewater assimilation, water quality, fish and wildlife habitats, hydroelectric power generation, navigation, recreation, flooding, and all reasonable alternatives. Then the commission must decide whether the benefits of the proposed transfer outweigh the detriments, and if the detriments have been or will be mitigated to a reasonable degree. That's their press release. That is not the standard in the general statute. It is not what is reasonable. That IBT statute says they must, to the maximum degree, limit the detrimental effects, not what's reasonable or what's cost effective to Union County. Tom Terrell, our attorney, and I'll certainly pass this on to Ms. Dunn and hope that she releases this quote. Tom Terrell, our attorney, says this press release is an after-the-fact justification and defense of their flawed method of public notice and the abdication of their oversight by asserting quite boldly that the statute required Union County to conduct the environmental studies. It is a shameless propaganda contradicted by general statute. We have 60 days to appeal that decision. It is my recommendation, and I will have Mr. Terrell and Ms. Finley here at our June meeting. We'll schedule a closed session if it meets the approval of the chairman and the board to discuss our options. But again, we know that there's going to be other thirsty counties and growing areas looking to get water out of Lake Tillery. We're not opposed to transfers. We're just want it to be done in what's in the best benefit of the people of North Carolina as a whole and to the environment. And I think it would be certainly worthy to listen to them and to talk with Stanley County, who's also hired counsel and engineers, about a pathway forward to try to stop this.
Mr. Wood, I certainly don't have a problem with that. I don't think the commissioners have a problem with us having I'd like to put it in a work session in front of our meeting if I could. Can we do that?
Yes, sir.
As a closed session. Of course, we'll have to open, and we may have other business we want to do. We will certainly do it open. Okay. Mr. Manager, anything else?
Again,
Any
thanks
commissioners
to
have any
all
questions
staff.
for the staff? And you folks, to our staff, and the sheriff and his office, we thank you for, of course, we got another month in the budget, but we've had a lot of conversation. Everybody came to the table with us in our retreat and throughout this process of budgeting, which is not easy. It's not easy for any of y'all because you have to live with the consequences, if you will. But I can't tell you, and I think any other commissioners can speak, but I'm not putting words in their mouth, but I'm paraphrasing for them. We appreciate all of our staff. We appreciate everybody. Everybody. Had to deal with one of your deputies today, Mr. Sheriff, and it was very professional. Very professional.
Did he let you off?
I'm gonna get a meal with him after that. They let me off, yeah. I don't have to eat at the jail tonight. Anything else, commissioners? Good. If not, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Got a motion, Commissioner Christico to adjourn. Have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Matheny. Any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Meeting adjourned.